read Helter Skelter till I was 15 or 16 living in Culpeper, but I remember uh, getting these vague pieces of conversation about Vietnam, and I had no idea what the hell Vietnam was. But I remember this really vivid memory of somebody that my mom and my aunt knew. Her husband had been to Vietnam and come home, and they were talking about it, and I didn't know what Vietnam was, and I wasn't paying attention to the conversation until I heard them say, my aunt said, she said he just absolutely stunk, and she didn't think he'd ever get clean again where he didn't stink. And I thought that was really weird. And then all of a sudden, when the Beatles, my mom and aunt were Beatles fans, but when Paul McCartney came out and said that the Beatles had done drugs, they went complete country and never looked back, and there was no more Beatles for them. And I got everybody's Beatles records because they didn't want to have nothing to do with the Beatles since they was on drugs. But then there was this Manson thing where everybody, almost overnight, all the older people in the Friendship of Community hated hippies, hated anybody with a weird looking hat, long hair, or anything, because that's when people started locking their doors at night, locking their cars, because everything happens in California first, I guess. But it was almost like
they thought all hippies were.
If it could happen there, and it's obviously the root cause of it had to be drugs. So we know that these people around here are doing drugs, and they've got long hair. So the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to come in our house and kill us. Well, I didn't put this together until later on, but in 1970, while the murders happened in 69, and I think they were convicted and put in jail in 71. So the year between 1970, Thanksgiving 1970, we raised hogs, and I participated in my first hog killing. What this consisted of was my dad's cousins had hogs below us, and we had hogs, and we were going up to another cousin's house maybe a mile away to do the butchering. But we killed the hogs there. We had a long flatbed wagon pulled by a tractor, and we started at my house. We had about 32 hogs, and we shot them with a .22. Shot every one of them in the head. There was one hog that was kind of like black and white, and it took 4 bullets to kill that fucker, man. And I saw him taking bullets in the head, and he stood still. He never dropped, and I just remember being mesmerized by that. Like, this fucking pig ain't gonna die. And he finally dropped. So I didn't know what to expect, so we loading all these dead hogs on a tractor, on a flatbed wagon. Then we go down the road about 50 yards, 100 yards. My dad's cousin only had like maybe 6 or 8 pigs. We shot them, put them on there, and we run on up the hill about 2 miles. We get up there, and the first thing you do is you hoist them up on the back of a tractor, like a log chain, and you split them down the middle, and you gut them, and rake all their innards out into a big tub. And they've got this big thing of boiling water, and you dump them in that to scald them, so that the women can take a razor and scrape all the hair and shit off of them. I don't know why, because I wouldn't think that you would eat the outside, but hell, who knows,
Cracklings.
Cracklings, I don't know, but it was Thanksgiving Day, and we started early in the morning. I don't know, like maybe 7 o'clock, and probably didn't eat Thanksgiving until maybe 2. But I remember going over to this big vat that had all these innards and organs and hearts and livers and shit, and me and my cousin poking them with a stick, and watching them jiggle like a heart or a liver or whatever it was. And then when I got back to sit down at Thanksgiving dinner, I looked at the cranberry, which wasn't sliced up, and it looked exactly like what I'd been jiggling in the thing. So I've never eaten cranberry to this fucking day, probably because of that. And it was so fucking traumatic that I couldn't even eat jelly on a biscuit. And I really love jelly biscuits, but it's probably a year before I could eat jelly biscuits again, just because of this hog killing thing. But that was only the phase 1 The second part is like hanging the meat in the smokehouse and making sausage in the fucking basement. I don't even know how the fuck.
basement?
Yeah, in the basement. You know, it's a big old fucking wood stove, cooking up bacon and ham and making sausage and shit and homemade biscuits. And the best part of it was, my uncle Daryl, who's he only lives about a mile, maybe 3 miles from Sandy. He's dead now. He would get the hog heads. He'd get a big pig head, like in the Butcher Boy, and chases around the yard with it. And of course, the other big thing was to keep a pig's tail. And my uncle would wrap a pig's tail up at Christmas and give it to my mom.
Why?
Because, you know, it was funny to run through this big ass package, you know, and then get to the bottom and it'd be like a goddamn 3-month-old or a 2-month-old dead pig's tail. You know, it'd be about that long and shit. Yeah, it was a pretty cool thing. So anyway, fast forwarding to when I read Helter Skelter and the whole thing was kill the pigs, you know, I hadn't quite made the connection that pigs were cops or the establishment, you know, because I was kind of young and I just was getting into this whole, you know, cops or pigs thing, and so I couldn't get beyond that I'm a hillbilly country boy hog killing time thing, you know, to really get into the kill the pigs. And then, you know, of course I figured out what was going on, you know, kill the pigs and all that. And the first time that I dropped LSD, I had this amazing panorama of cops, pigs, hogs thing that just never left me. So I actually wrote this song, and it was inspired by one of Cindy's friends, because there was this movie about this army lieutenant or army captain, this McDonald guy who read about the Manson murders in Time magazine and then killed his family. And he said that these hippies broke in and killed his family. And he said that there was this girl who was obviously whacked out on drugs, and she kept saying over and over, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs." So Cindy's friend, when he came to my house one night, he was drunk and he's got this funky voice, and he said, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs."